Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. We want to begin our broadcast today as we normally do, welcoming our friends in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I'm pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media platform out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. Today, we're going to have a very special conversation with a very dear friend. I want to, in the interest of full disclosure, I've known this young lady for many years. I know her and her family. I saw her as a young girl, and today she has blossomed into this highly accomplished young lady. She's a wife, a mother. She's a professional in a very, very important field of endeavor, doing phenomenal work. I'm so proud of her, Laila Al-Arian. But before we bring her on, we want to see a clip from. It's a heavy documentary. I mean, it's really heavy on the heart. I've been aware of the documentary now for a couple of weeks, but it took me having to prepare for today's conversation to actually sit down and watch it. I watched it last night. And the reason being is because it's so heavy. It's heavy. You've got to mentally prepare yourself for it. The title of the documentary is The Night Won't End. And it's about Palestine. It's about Gaza. It's about the genocide that's taking place. And this guest of mine today is the executive producer of this very important documentary. Before we bring her on, though, let's see a little clip from the documentary, Brother Sadiq.
يعني ايش تجيب البسكوت الواد ما تلاقيش ابنك تلاقيه نايم تمه كله رايح.
We have counted more children killed in a single strike than we have in any other conflict, time and time again.
Hind was screaming for help.
والله أصعب شعور في العالم إني أسمع بنتي بتقول لي تعالي خديني ومش قادرة أوصلها يا حبيبتي يا ماما والله ما قدرت أوصل لك سامحني.
It's very likely that they would have been able to see who was in the car.
The US has actual knowledge that war crimes are being committed. Of course we do. And yet we continue to provide the arms that enable these.
We have not seen anything that would convince us that we need to take a different approach in terms of trying to help Israel defend itself.
You are basically saying the rules are no longer applicable. They have opened the door to hell.
أول ما خشوا كلنا بصوت واحد إحنا مدنيين مدنيين مدنيين.
بلشوا في الإعدامات قدام عينينا كلنا.
What is your message to the families of Palestinian civilians who were killed with US weapons in Gaza?
بالذات الليل لما يجي برضاش يخلص. الليل مرعب. الليل يعني خوف. الليل يعني إنك تتذكر هند. مش راضي يخلص الليل.
Without any further ado, let's welcome our guest to the platform. Assalamu alaikum, Laila. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. I'm sorry that I have to have you on the broadcast today on a topic that is this traumatic, but I want you to know I am proud of you. I'm proud of the work you're doing. And, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Brother Mauri, and thank you for that very kind and generous introduction. I'm very, humbled to be here, and like you, wish that it were under better circumstances. my colleagues and I who made this film, I should mention the director and the producer is Kavitha Shukuru, the correspondent is Sharif Abdul Quddus. You know, we keep talking about how surreal it is that we finished this film. You know, it came out last Friday, and the genocide is still ongoing. Every single day, we see the most horrific headlines and news reports. Of course, usually not in the Western mainstream or legacy or corporate news media, but in either on social media or in places like Al Jazeera. And there's just something really upsetting and mind-boggling about the fact that it's been going on for so long. It's so relentless. It's so never-ending. And that we finished this film and it came out and it's still happening day in and day out. And I think we all very much feel helpless to stop it.
How did the idea for the documentary come about, and how difficult was it to make?
Sure. Well, you know, my show is called Fault Lines. It's a documentary show based out of the Washington, D.C. office of Al Jazeera English. And, you know, we make 12 episodes a year, 6 in the spring and 6 in the fall. And by the time October 7th happened and Israel's kind of relentless bombardment of Gaza began, I had already commissioned all of the episodes for the season, which is, you know, usually how it goes. It's sort of staggered, but by then, you know, they'd all been basically filmed in an edit, and I just felt really helpless and hopeless in some ways, but helpless especially, just watching everything happening and not being able to report on it. So I immediately knew that, you know, come next season, which was the spring season, that we would definitely do something. And my colleague Kavitha had been, you know, just like me, even though she's not Palestinian, but she probably more than most people I know was following what was happening in Gaza so closely. She even knew who all of the cameramen were, and, you know, really following it in intricate detail just through social media and through, you know, journalistic accounts. And we both kind of put our heads together and thought, okay, how are we going to do this? Unfortunately, as your audience, I'm sure knows, no independent or foreign journalist or Western journalist or anybody outside of Gaza is able to get into Gaza. That's been the case since October 7th. But even before that, we all know that, you know, for anyone who's been even remotely following the situation in Gaza, we know that there was, you know, a 17-year siege and blockade that made actually getting into Gaza close to impossible. Is very, very difficult. Even for people with family there, even for people who grew up there, you kind of had to jump through hoops. But now, of course, for journalists who are not already in Gaza, there's no getting in. So what we ended up doing was working with local journalists on the ground. We worked with a film and media company that's, you know, that was founded in Gaza, that had a pretty extensive track record of making documentary films, called Mediatown. And they then hired local, you know, cameramen on the ground to help us film the documentary. And the way we sort of came up with it, and I give a lot of credit again to my colleague Kavitha, is we wanted to tell the story of what was happening to the people of Gaza through these 3 families. And all of their experiences, all of which are horrific and horrendous and traumatic, kind of represent a different part of the war. So with the Salim family, it's a very large family that on December 11th experienced a massive airstrike that wiped out over 100 members of one family. Very horrific, very destructive, 50 of whom were children. So we worked with this UK-based nonprofit research group that looks into civilian harm called Air Wars. And they were able to identify the names of the people who were killed in that attack. And their conclusion is that this is one of so many such attacks in Gaza. So because the majority of the people being killed in Gaza are being killed in airstrikes, we knew that it was really important to focus on an airstrike. And then we also focused on Al-Ghaf family, Abdullah Al-Ghaf, his wife, and 4 children. Abdullah was one of many people in Gaza, you know, millions of people told by the Israeli military to leave the north of Gaza. And he followed those orders and went to the south in a so-called safe zone. Yes. Which, you know, when you hear U.S. kind of political leaders defend what's happening in terms of the Israeli conduct in Gaza. They say, well, there's all these safe zones. They tell them where to go. But what we found, of course, in our reporting is that there's nowhere safe in Gaza. So Abdullah al-Ghaf followed those orders. And then, unfortunately, an artillery attack killed his wife and a 2-year-old son, injured his 8-year-old son, who later died of his injuries. And he's now displaced in Rafah. But actually, when the Israeli military took over Rafah, we believe he was one of the many, many, many people who ended up having to leave Rafah. So you're talking about families who have been displaced so many times. And then we also follow the case of Hind Rajab. Perhaps it's the most well-known case of all of the ones that we look at in our film. And that's the 6-year-old girl whose family also left the north to go to the south. And then when they realized the south wasn't safe, went back north, only for her to be attacked in a car that she was traveling in, along with her mother's uncle and his family. And we know her phone call with the Palestine Red Crescent Society, where she was begging for them to come rescue her, kind of became famous around the world. And we know the tragic way that her story ends, which is the Israeli military killing her entire family that she was traveling with, and the paramedics who were traveling with her.
So how long from start to finish did it take to make this film? And it's a very provocative title. How did you all come up with that title?
Well, it took 5 months start to finish because, it took a long time for us to work with the crew in Gaza. I mean, you're talking about people working under just unbearable conditions. Everything the people of Gaza are going through, they're going through. So they're very hungry. They're very tired, exhausted, fatigued. They themselves are losing family members all the time. And, they don't have comms, they don't have transportation. Just to get from point A to point B, you have to figure out so many logistics because there's no fuel, there's no food, there's no, working cell towers. There's no internet. So everything is a struggle. So even just to have them send us the footage was a struggle. And, anyone who watches the film is really impressed with just the quality of the cinematography. So they really didn't want to, cut any corners with that. They did such a beautiful job, but it took some time and some coordination for them to do that. And then, of course, it was a lengthy edit because it's a 78-minute film, which we're not really accustomed to doing. So yeah, it took some time for us to put it all together. And then, we did some filming in the UK as well with Air Wars and Forensic Architecture, which is a research group that ended up doing an entire reconstruction of the killing of Hind Rajab. And we also tried very, very hard to get the State Department or the White House to give us interviews. They did not. They refused over a period of 4 months, actually.
Well, before I forget.
Go ahead. You asked me about the title of the film.
Yes. So how did you know about that?
And that comes from something that Hind's mother says in the beginning of the film, where she's talking about how nighttime feels for her and her young son. And, she says the night is frightening. It's terrifying. She talks about her son waking up in the middle of the night and turning his back to the night because he knows that the night means especially ferocious attacks. And then she said, kind of quoting her son, like, the night won't end. And we felt like it was such a poignant metaphor to this ongoing bombardment and slaughter of the people of Gaza. And then after the night won't end, it says Biden's war on Gaza. And that's because this is as much the Biden administration's war as it is Israel's war, because as the journalist Akbar Shahid Ahmed tells us, who's a Huffington Post journalist, he tells our team that, one former senior Israeli official told him with one phone call, this could all end, but unfortunately, with one phone call from the White House, but that phone call never came.
Indeed. Now, I had your father on about 3 weeks ago, and the two of us are in periodic, social media communication. But I haven't seen or spoken to your mother in quite a while. How is she doing, especially following that outrageous stunt that Mayor Adams in New York City pulled? following her brief visit to Columbia University. How is she doing? And what are your thoughts on what happened in the aftermath of that visit?
Well, first I should mention that my mother herself, her father is originally from Gaza. He passed away in Gaza in 2019. So, one thing we've been thinking, and she still has relatives there. She has many relatives. Because we've seen so many reports of the Israeli military kind of digging up cemeteries and graveyards, we've been wondering what came of her father, which basically kind of underscores that even in death, Palestinians can't rest or have any peace from the Israeli military. But my mother lost more than 200 members of her extended family. It's just a staggering number, but it's not a surprise. I don't know if there's a single family in Gaza that at this point hasn't lost loved ones. And when you talk about larger families, it just means larger death tolls. And then, your audience may not know this, but back in late April, she visited Columbia University just because she was so inspired by the encampment there and support and solidarity with the people of Gaza, especially as, she had found out so many members of her own family were killed. It was a very brief visit. She just went, looked at it, was very inspired and happy to be there. And then my father happened to post on Twitter a photo of her there. And then the Adams administration, he's Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, shamefully used her visit as a pretext to justify the deployment of dozens and dozens of NYPD officers to the Columbia University campus to arrest and take away the protesters who had occupied Hamilton Hall, which they renamed Hind's Hall after 6-year-old Hind Rajab. And he basically kept implying in news conferences and speaking to journalists, he said, the wife of a known terrorist was on the campus. And my mother had visited the previous week, but of course she had nothing to do with, any of the student organizing or anything like that. But she was really upset that the mayor used her very brief visit to basically try to smear the students and to try to justify his very disturbing crackdown. I mean, reporters who'd covered the aftermath of mass shootings in the US, literal like school shootings, were like, we've never seen this many police officers in our life deployed for anything, so they could arrest unarmed, peaceful protesters. It was really, 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 really unimaginable. And for him to use my mother, a 63-year-old grandmother, retired teacher, to justify that was just shameful.
Yes, indeed, it was. It was shameful. I was so angry that I ended up devoting a broadcast to sharing information on it and expressing my own outrage for what was done. Laila, this broadcast is coming out of South Africa, out of Johannesburg. And as you know, South Africa has played a very important role in generating international pressure, making sure that this is something that is not able to be swept under the global rug. What are your thoughts on what South Africa has done?
It's been incredible. It's been, I think one of the few bright spots in a very, 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 horrible time. A time of grief, nonstop mourning, a time when, as Agnes Callamard says in our film, she's the Secretary General of Amnesty International, they've opened the gates to hell. Yes. They've completely upended international law. The amount of atrocities taking place in Gaza on a daily basis are just incomprehensible. I mean, every single day I'm on social media. Again, it's social media. It's not the news. It's certainly not US news. Reading about the most, brutal and horrifying human rights abuses that are taking place, whether it's the killing or torture of prisoners. Just before coming on this broadcast, I saw that 2 children were targeted by Israeli snipers, or rather quadcopters. I'm not sure if you heard about these quadcopters, but they're basically armed. They're kind of like smaller than what you think of as like a typical Predator drone, but they're these kind of smaller armed drones that shoot bullets at Palestinians, and that 2 children were out to buy sweets and were shot in the leg by these quadcopters. So, and then this morning, I heard from a journalist in Gaza, and I said, what's the situation for you guys? What's going on? He said, well, we're being attacked by Apaches, artillery, quadcopters, like just the number of weapons being used at the same time by the Israeli military against Palestinian civilians is just out of this world. I mean, I just can't even imagine how the people of Gaza are faring. So in the midst of all of that, to have South Africa take this courageous stance, because we all know that coming out in defense of Palestinians always has a cost, and really anchoring it in the language of human rights and appealing to the world's conscience, and trying to approach it through the International Court of Justice. I mean, it's like I said, it's been one of the few bright spots in this really horrific time. And I should mention that 2 of the stories in our film, both relating to the same family, the Salim family, were actually both included in South Africa's application to the ICJ, one being that December 11th attack, or rather specifically mentioning that there's these airstrikes that are killing generations of families, multiple generations. There's a moment in the film, which your audience will see, when an older gentleman says, they killed my wife, my grandchildren, my daughter, my son, my daughter, my daughter. He's just mentioning different generations of his own family. And later on, I found out that elderly man passed away. And I asked his nephew, how did your uncle die? And he said he died from grief. He said he died crying over his loved ones. Mm-hmm. So, and then the other mention in the ICJ, South Africa's ICJ application, was the December 19th field execution or summary execution by Israeli soldiers of 11 men and boys related to the Anan and Salim and Ghalayini families, and Al-Ashi as well. So it was 11 men and boys on December 19th. It was a summary execution. We reported on this case extensively, gathering evidence, video evidence, very consistent testimony by survivors and eyewitnesses, as well as extemporaneous text messages and voice notes as well, to show that Israeli soldiers came in, the families kept saying, we're civilians, we're civilians. They beat them. They broke the jaw of Hiba Salim, who we interviewed, the husband's jaw, who they ended up executing. They made them all strip, including the women. They made the men strip down to their boxers. They had them on, they forced them to go down on their hands and knees, and then executed 11 men and boys.
SubhanAllah, what we're seeing is not just savagery. What we're seeing is demonic behavior on the part of human beings. It's beyond imagination that something of this nature could be taking place before the eyes of the world. And the country, you mentioned all of the weaponry, the different types of sophisticated weaponry that's being used, and the country that likes to project itself around the world as the land of liberty and justice for all is financing this, is supporting it on so many levels. It's so tragic. Laila, what do you think about the recent, just took place on last Thursday, the Biden-Trump debate that took place in the upcoming elections in November, and how much of a factor do you think Gaza will play in these upcoming elections?
It's a good question. I mean, it seems like the president's age is becoming more and more of a factor. I mean, there's now calls for him to actually drop out of the race. We'll see if that actually ends up happening. But I think for young voters, for voters of color, for Arab and Muslim voters, which, you know, in the grand scheme of things aren't a massive number, but in the swing state of Michigan can make or break the election. You know, they've all said not all obviously, but a big number of Arab and Muslim voters especially have said because of the genocide in Gaza, they will not vote for President Biden again. You heard a lot about that as well from young voters, from voters of color. I think there's enough voters that have been pretty, turned off by this administration due to its unconditional support of Israel throughout the mass killing in Gaza, that it will be a factor. I don't know how big of a factor it will be in the grand scheme of things, but I think it will be a factor in some of those key swing states, especially Michigan. Enough to potentially sway the election.
I agree. And I certainly won't vote for Biden if he chooses to remain in the running. In fact, for some time now, we have been, whenever someone asks my opinion is that the party should select another representative they just should put forward another representative other than Biden.
I think people are disgusted by the whole system. The fact that these are the two candidates, the fact that there are the only two parties, even people are not happy with the Democratic Party. I mean, there's very few exceptions of people who've spoken out about what's happening in Gaza. But remember, this is a party that censured, well, I guess not the majority of Democrats, but many Democrats censured Rashida Tlaib, their own colleague.
That's right.
In Congress, merely for calling for the freedom of Palestinians. You know, there have been a number of high-profile Democrats, like Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, who've come out as very staunch supporters of Israel. Obviously, you see very high-profile Democrats within the administration, like John Kirby, like Matt Miller, who are the spokespeople. And then you hear about Brett McGurk and Jake Sullivan as well, key members of the cabinet also being very staunchly pro-Israel. But at the same time, I should mention, I don't think a lot of people have illusions about Trump either. I think, have you heard of Project 2025?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So, there's this kind of outline of some of the key steps that the Trump administration, this is by, I believe, a think tank that's working to kind of persuade Trump to take on certain issues when or if he's reelected. And it's very racist against Palestinians. I mean, it's basically hate speech, calling Palestinians uniquely violent, saying the Arab world should take care of them. I mean, a lot of it's kind of these very pro-Israel tropes and stereotypes. But so I don't think people have. And then we've heard in the last week, Trump use Palestinian as a slur 2 days in a row.
Yes, indeed.
For the election, and then the next day at his rally. So I don't think people have illusions that he's going to be pro-Palestine in any way, shape, or form. But I think people are just so disillusioned by the Biden administration over Gaza that they just can't see themselves circling his name in November should he stay in the race.
And I certainly am among them. My position for months now has been neither Biden nor Trump. We can't, in good conscience, vote for either one of these scoundrels. My own feeling is that I want Biden to lose. He should not. If he remains in the race, he should not win re-election. He should not be given that gift. For him to lose, it will send a huge message to the entire establishment and to those beyond the borders of the U.S. that are closely monitoring the political affairs of America. It will send a big message. My own feeling is that if both of these scoundrels remain in the race and Trump wins, what we should be doing now in the lead up is really focusing attention on the down ballot, on the two houses of Congress, on the state legislatures around the country to ensure that Trump, should he regain office, will not have a Republican majority to be able to do a tremendous amount of damage to this country, more than what has already been done. That's my own view. The release of Julian Assange, we're in the final minute or two. of this. I know it was going to go fast. What are your thoughts on the release of Assange?
Sure. Well, my program did a documentary on his case called The Imprisonment of Julian Assange. So if anyone is interested in watching it, you could type in The Imprisonment of Julian Assange Fault Lines or Al Jazeera. It should come up. YouTube did age restrict it, just as it age restricted our film, The Night Won't End. So you have to work a little bit it makes you sign in to verify your age in order to watch these films. But look, I think Julian Assange should never have been indicted. He should never have been prosecuted. He was a publisher who published essentially documents that exposed U.S. war crimes in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. And he worked with established news organizations like The Guardian, like the New York Times, like the Washington Post to publish these documents. And, people like the Knight Center at Columbia University, people like journalists that he worked with at The Guardian have all said, this is criminalizing journalism. This is going to have a very, very this is going to set a very dangerous precedent if this trial moves ahead. And if, he ends up getting sentenced, I think they were looking at up to 175 years behind bars.
Yes.
I did hear an interview on Democracy Now! With the lawyer Jamil Jaffer, who's a First Amendment expert, who said even the plea agreement, that it's not great because that even sets kind of a political precedent in terms of criminalizing journalism. But I think everyone who has concern about the First Amendment, about the ability of journalists to do their jobs, to publish state secrets in the public interest, which journalists do all the time in terms of getting things leaked to them by sources and publishing those, that was setting a dangerous precedent. And that, Julian Assange has been in prison for a very long time. He'd been held at Belmarsh prison, which is the UK's harshest prison, I believe, for 5 years. And then before that, he was held basically what's effectively under house arrest in the Ecuadorian embassy for a long time as well. So I'm sure on a personal level, he's relieved to finally be with his family.
Okay, is there any final thought you'd like to share with the audience?
The final thought is, I know that there's probably some fatigue when it comes to Gaza. We've been at this for 9 months in terms of just being bombarded with a stream of really disturbing news and videos and images and headlines. But please don't stop watching. Don't look away. The least that we can do as human beings who are not in Gaza is to bear witness to their suffering and to keep talking about it as much as we can, and to make sure that they are not forgotten. That's what they keep asking us over and over again. Please don't forget us. Please don't forget us. Please keep talking about what's happening to us. And I know that it can be really difficult on the soul, especially for people who have compassion, who have a heart, who really feel for what's happening to the people of Gaza, to keep looking. But I just ask you to please continue bearing witness as much as you can, and don't stop. Please watch our film, The Night Won't End. If you type The Night Won't End, Al Jazeera, it should come up. Please share it. Please hold screenings. Please tell your friends about it. We want as many people as possible to watch it and to really understand what's happening to the people of Gaza on the ground.
Okay, I want to end with a special request to you and to your media colleagues, your network. The genocide in Gaza has forced open a lot of eyes around the world regarding issues of justice and oppression. Folk are seeing the true nature of apartheid Zionist Israel, and they're also getting a front row peek into the other America, the America that is not so beautiful. My request to you and your colleagues, dear Laila, is this is an ideal time for networks like yours to bring attention to the political prisoners that are being held here in the United States and in other parts of the world, but especially here in the US. There are hundreds. Dr. Afia Siddiqui, Imam Jamil, Abdullah El-Amin, and so many more. So I just want to end my part of this conversation with that request. Please give whatever attention you can to our political prisoners, and may Allah Ta'ala bless the work that you and your colleagues are doing. And again, my dear sister, I am so proud of you.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, we're going to go to a station break now and then come back on the other side with the closing part of today's broadcast.
Party, corporate event, or any special occasion, Kaniz Catering Services got you covered. Our catering services are here to elevate your event to unforgettable heights. From tantalizing appetizers to mouth-watering main courses and desserts, our culinary creations are crafted with passion and precision to delight your guests' taste buds. Our spit braai is a talk of the town. Indulge in succulent, tender meats, slow roasted to perfection over an open flame. Kaniz Catering Services chefs bring creativity and expertise to every dish they prepare, ensuring that each bite is a culinary masterpiece. We take care of your guests while you relax and enjoy every moment of your function. Whether it's plated meals to a simple buffet, we are on top of it all. Ready to start planning your perfect event? Get in touch with us today to discuss your catering needs and request a personalized quote. Let us take your event to the next level with our exceptional catering services. Kaniz Catering Services, situated at number 373 Jabundlovo Street, Pietermaritzburg. Call now 033 342 3511 or email us on info@kaniz.co.za. For Pietermaritzburg and surrounding areas only. Visit www.kaniz.co.za.
Contact Lenasia Livestock and Poultry for all your sadaqah, akika and kurbani requirements. We offer clean, hygienic abattoir style and refrigeration facilities. Sheep, goats and cows are available at competitive market-related prices, direct to the public. We slaughter, slice and distribute on your behalf. But that's not all. Introducing Meat Masters Halal Butchery, our sister company situated on our farm in Lenasia. Unbeatable prices on lamb, beef and chicken. Lenasia Livestock and Poultry. Livestock is our business. We are Sanha approved. Telephone 011-857-1774. Call now.
After the recent attacks on Gaza, many families have been displaced with their homes left destroyed. Through your donations, our teams are on the ground in Gaza, providing support and delivering necessary aid to families affected. The people of Gaza need your help. Give hope. Donate today to Penny Appeal South Africa. www.pennyappeal.org.za 031 1100 573.
We are here on the ground with Penny Appeal organizations in Gaza.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
In the Eastern Cape, children are facing unimaginable hunger. A baby was rescued, fed only powdered drink. A young girl lost her life searching for food. Children eat grass to survive and return to school on Mondays too hungry to learn, some even crying from hunger. Teachers and principals are giving what little they have, but it's not enough. This Ramadan, you can make a difference. Help us support Muslim families in Gqeberha and rural Eastern Cape. Together, we can feed hope, fight hunger, foster change. Donate to the Al-Fida Foundation. Send your proof of payments to admin@alfida.co.za for Section 18A tax certificates or contact us on 041 484 1288.
You South African, of course. You anxious about the future. We've got you covered. Build on your wealth portfolio with Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange. Visit us at 151 Stephen Dlamini Road, Musgrave, Durban, or call us on 031-202-4700 for more information. Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange, your passport to gold investment.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Welcome back. Recently, a piece of video came to my attention of a young lady who I have a tremendous amount of admiration for. There are a number of folk, especially ladies in the media sphere, that have not only informed but inspired me over the past few years. This lady's name is Abby, if I recall correctly. I don't remember her last name right now, but I've seen her, a number of her presentations over the past year or two, and I've always been impressed. She delivered a piece of commentary that reminded me of a poem that I wrote back in the 80s. This was a poem that came to birth after the siege on Lebanon, in which hundreds of predominantly women and children, because the men had been induced to leave the refugee camps on the promise, a big lie. I mean, apartheid Israel and their affiliates are known for lying as they breathe. But the lie was told to them that if the men of fighting age left the refugee camps of Sabra and Shatila, that there would not be a siege. The men left, and there was a siege. Again, hundreds of women and children were murdered. And this is what opened my eyes in a very visceral way to the crisis of Palestine. And I ended up writing this poem through tears of pain and tears of anger. Israel, oh Israel. The poem goes like this. And I was reminded of this poem when I saw this recent clip of Abby delivering one of her thought-provoking pieces of commentary. A nation of people born from injustice, causing great sorrow in all civilized among us. You claim your only concern to be your security, but your true intent is plain enough for everyone to see. There are Jews among you who detest what you do, but their voices are muffled and they seem to be few. You're proud and you're arrogant, malicious and clever. You seem to think world sympathy is going to shield you forever. Oh, but the bed is too short and the covers are too narrow. You can't see the handwriting for your scope is too narrow. Aggressive you've been since the day you were born, from the anguish and misery of lives you have torn. Israel, oh Israel, where will you be when the pages have dried on your history? Now, this poem was written in 1982 after the siege on Lebanon and the murder of hundreds of Palestinian women and children and a few old and infirm men that were left behind. The part of that poem, the stanza within that poem that Abby brought to mind was that line, there are Jews among you who detest what you do, but their voices are muffled and they seem to be few. Yes, indeed, there are very few Israeli Jews who are outraged by what the apartheid state of Israel has been doing in Gaza and also on the West Bank and other parts of the occupied Palestinian territories. She points out in this thought-provoking piece of video that while there are those within the apartheid state of Israel and those in the global community, the United States and other Western so-called democracies, that will point the finger at Netanyahu and try to get people to believe that he is the one that is responsible for all of this. In fact, Netanyahu and the rest of his cabinet are all of the same murderous mind. There is no difference between any of them. And truth be told, as Abby so eloquently points out in this piece of video that you're about to see, the overwhelming majority of Israelis, the overwhelming majority, are right in lockstep with, in support of the genocide and the ethnic cleansing that is taking place in that occupied land. With that said, Brother Sadiq, let's see that piece of video.
People need to ask themselves why you never see Western media or pro-Israel media putting microphones in front of Israelis' faces. Why is that? Why is it that we only see pre-approved government spokespeople speaking to American and British audiences? That's because Israeli society is very, very fascist. Look at the polling. Less than 2% thought that Israel was using too much firepower in Gaza after they obliterated and decimated the entire Gaza Strip. The open fire policy at this fortified border fence, overwhelming majority, over 90% of Israelis support that. There were some Israeli human rights advocates that tried to take that policy to the Knesset, and it was overwhelmingly, unanimously upheld that no, we can shoot to kill unarmed people who are just straying too close to this border fence that essentially just prevents them from getting back to their ancestral lands. That's how fascist Israeli society is. I hate when I see politicians just trying to denounce Netanyahu as some sort of aberration from Israeli society. No, this is the norm. This is the norm. Look at every single cabinet minister. Every single member of the Knesset is out there spewing genocide, advocating mass murder of not just Palestinians, but babies. Babies. It is sick. It is sick. And I will never forgive journalists who are towing this line and pretending like this is some sort of aberration of the Likudniks and Netanyahu's. No, this is Israel. This is Israel. This is a settler colonial state founded upon ethnic cleansing. And it only exists because of the continuous ethnic cleansing of the indigenous population. So that's Israeli society. I saw it firsthand. And people want to paint those interviews that I did. Oh, I'm trying to do a gotcha. Oh, I'm trying to pick the most crazy sounding people. No, that's Israeli society. The left is non-existent, Ash.
Yes, indeed. I could not have said it better. Netanyahu is not an aberration. He is not. With that said, before we get into the final stretch of today's broadcast, let's go to another commercial, Brother Sadiq.
Attention drivers, revamp your ride with top quality tires at Best Drive Braamfontein. Our seasoned technicians guarantee a perfect fit for a smooth, safe journey. Choose from premium brands to budget-friendly options, all at competitive prices with special offers. From tire installations to brakes and shocks, we have all your vehicle needs covered. We also specialize in wheels, batteries, and suspension repairs. Get to meet our hands-on director, Mohammed Desai. With over 3 decades of experience, he ensures you receive exceptional service. Enjoy Salah facilities, and a complimentary tea or coffee while you wait. Don't compromise on safety and performance. Ample parking available and full-time security on premises. Visit Best Drive Braamfontein today or call 011 837 4000 or 5000. We are 1 kilometer off the M1 highway. Take the Smith Street off-ramp towards Fordsburg, Fitas. Best Drive Braamfontein, where excellence meets service.
Yasin Badat Financial Advisory. Are your financial goals feeling out of reach? Yasin Badat Financial Advisory is here to turn your aspirations into achievements. Our dedicated team, armed with a history of success, is ready to guide you through the complex nature of financial and investment planning. Whether you're a seasoned investor or new to the game, our personalized solutions cater to your unique goals and risk appetite. Trust in our commitment to transparency, integrity, and excellence. Ready to unlock a world of financial freedom? Partner with us today. Call Yasin Badat Financial Advisory at +27 33 346 2071 or visit www.yasinbadat.com. Yasin Badat Financial Advisory, guiding you to financial success.
You South African, of course. You anxious about the future. We've got you covered. Build on your wealth portfolio with Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange. Visit us at 151 Stephen Dlamini Road, Musgrave, Durban, or call us on 031-202-4700 for more information. Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange, your passport to gold investment.
People of Palestine need your support now. Africa Muslims Agency is on the ground, already providing food, medication, and emergency supplies in Gaza. Donate any amount to Heal Palestine at africamuslimsagency.co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Welcome back. The U.S. House of Representatives voted to hide Gaza's death toll statistics. This is a recent vote that was taken in the House. A bipartisan group voted 269 to 144 to pass an amendment to the State Department's annual appropriations bill. 62 Democrats joined, all but 2 Republicans, in the passing of this measure. Again, 62 Democrats and all but 2 Republicans in the House voted for this measure to hide the death statistics coming out of Gaza. This is a graphic example of how deep the fundamentally un-American, that other America, the better of the 2 Americas that we see too little of, how far removed it is from the pulse of what is taking place on Capitol Hill these days. Again, an amendment to hide death statistics. This mentality that cheapens the lives of our Palestinian brothers and sisters is what factored into something that just took place recently in Texas. At all places, a community swimming pool, when a woman, a disease-minded woman, attempted to drown 2 little Palestinian children. Let's see that clip, Brother Sadiq.
This is Elizabeth Wolf, and on May 19th, she was in a pool in an apartment complex in Texas, but she wasn't the only one there. There was also a Palestinian-American family of 3, a mother wearing her hijab, her 6-year-old son, and her 3-year-old daughter playing in the shallow end. And when Elizabeth heard the mother speak a foreign language, she approached them, interrogating the mother about her race. And when the mother said that she was Palestinian, Elizabeth Wolfe jumped into the pool and dragged her son and her daughter to the deep end to drown them. And as she held her daughter's face under the water, she snatched the mother's hijab off of her and beat her with it. The son was able to escape, but the daughter couldn't, and her lungs were filled with water. But luckily, she survived. But that's not where it ends. When Elizabeth Wolfe was arrested, she yelled out to a bystander, comforting the mother, and said, "Tell her I will kill her and kill her whole family." But it doesn't just end there. This incident just hit the news, and I want to show you what happens when you look up Elizabeth Wolfe's name on Google. So here I am, looking it up. This is from my phone. I screen recorded this, and it says, Muslim women accused of trying to drown children. My only question is, why the hell does it say that? It doesn't even say the word Palestinian. The Muslims were the victims in this situation. What it should say is Islamophobe accused of trying to drown 2 Palestinian children. But it doesn't. At best, she's a murderous Islamophobe enraged by Israel's propaganda and the Western media. And at worst, she's a Zionist trying to murder another Palestinian abroad. About a week ago, I put together a video where I talked about multiple instances over the past few months where Zionists, driven by their hate, murdered or injured somebody in countries all across the world, and this just adds on to these attacks. Now, Elizabeth's bail bond is set at $40,000, but they're not even treating it like a hate crime. They're not even investigating this for a hate crime, and I think it should. And I think that bail bond needs to be set much higher. Please share and repost and copy the link on this video a bunch of times before you leave so more people hear about this.
Yes, indeed. When you have a disease, a socio-political disease like what the world is witnessing today, if you don't check it, it spreads. It spreads far and wide. And what we're seeing in occupied Palestine, what we're witnessing right here in the United States and in other parts of the world, especially in Western democracies, as they like to call themselves. It's an example of this. It's an example of how this disease is spreading, why and how it has to be checked. And it's going to require conscious folk, good-hearted people who believe in justice, people who believe in freedom and fairness for all, to be active in pushing back. Our guest today, Laila, Al-Arian, she ended her conversation with me with a request to the viewing and listening audience not to look away, not to pretend you don't see what you see, you don't hear what you hear. In order for us to bring about positive change, everyone must be involved. And on this note, let me say this. I want to end the broadcast with this. Inshallah ta'ala, this coming Friday, I will be back in Richmond, Virginia for my monthly address at Masjid Bilal. I am the guest khatib for Jummah, the first Friday of each month at Masjid Bilal. And given the fact that this will be the first Friday in the month of July, leading up to Independence Day and all of the celebrations that will be taking place on this country that is mired in contradictions, the address that I'm going to give, inshallah ta'ala, is going to be one that will really prick the conscience. It's going to be designed to prick the conscience of those of us who insist on maintaining these blinders, these flag embossed blinders, not seeing the country in its entirety for what it is. There are two Americas, as the late J. William Fulbright, a former senator who had the distinction of chairing one of the most powerful committees in the U.S. Senate longer than any other senator up till that time. I don't know if his record has been eclipsed, but up until that time, no one had chaired the Senate Foreign Relations Committee longer than J. William Fulbright. And he wrote a book in the twilight of his political career entitled what was it, America on Trial? And at any rate, in this book, he makes a very marked distinction between the two Americas, the America that we project to the world and the other America that we see most of, we have seen most of throughout our country's history. And of course, the challenge is for us to live up to that better America. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is that we do what the Quran calls upon humanity to do, and what the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, also enjoined in that same vein for humanity to do. Allah Ta'ala has said in the Quran, in that verse, the translation of the meaning being stand firmly for justice as witnesses to Allah, to God Almighty, even if it be against yourselves, your parents, or your kin, whether it be against rich or poor, for Allah, God Almighty, can best protect both. Do not follow the lusts of your heart, lest you swerve. And if you distort justice or decline to do justice, know that Allah is ever mindful of what you do. And then the Prophet, peace be upon him, is reported to have said, when you see an evil action, you must change it with your hand. If you cannot do so, with your tongue. If you cannot do so, detest it within your heart. And that is the weakest degree of faith. When more of us not only reflect and speak about this mandate that's given us by Almighty God and Almighty Allah's final messenger to all humanity, when we internalize this message and we act on it, then we're going to be able to bring about a whole new reality on this planet called Earth. May Allah bless us to see that better reality before it's too late. Oh, let me also say one last thing before we close. I'm going to be in Richmond this coming Friday for my address, but I'm also going to be paying a visit to a Islamic center in the Richmond area, one of the oldest, that has been reluctant to even respond to my requests to be able to bring some much needed information to the attention of my brothers and sisters in that area. This is also something that we can and should be doing throughout the country. Those of you who are reluctant, those of you leaders, quote unquote, leaders of these masajid and centers, especially the large and well-developed ones, who like to keep their brother Saalakhan at arm's distance. I mean, you smile at me, you give me warm verbal greetings, sometimes you even give me a hug, but you don't want to take it further than that. You want to keep me at a distance because you're uncomfortable with the kind of issues that I want to bring to the attention of our brothers and sisters. You got to stop this. It's time for this to stop. And so let me just send notice to my friends, my brothers at this particular Islamic center in the Richmond area that I will be visiting you this weekend after my visit at Masjid Bilal. Don't disappoint your brother. Don't disappoint the better part of yourselves by not responding in the manner that you should. This is a time for us to stand up a time for us to speak truth to power, a time for us to exemplify what we claim to be. And it's time for us to do as much as we possibly can to help bring about a better reality for us all. May Allah Ta'ala bless us along these lines as we close in the manner that we normally do. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihati. Wa tawassaw bil haqq. Wa tawassaw bis sabr. Which means, in the translation of the meaning, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time through the ages, surely humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another to patiently persevere. Peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.